Hello, I'm Superintendent Rashid. If you're here today, it's probably because you're interested in pursuing a policing career with the Calgary Police Service. Unfortunately, and as you know, with the COVID pandemic, we're not able to hold our regular recruiting information sessions where we participate in a dialogue and a question and answer sessions with prospective candidates of the Calgary Police Service. Today, we have the next best thing. I'm joined here with the help of an expert panel from our recruiting unit, and we're going to bring the information session to you wherever you are. I'd like to introduce Constable Jonathan Crespo and Constable Andy Buck from our recruiting unit, and Constable Tess Hare. Tess recently graduated from our CCLC, the Chief Crowfoot Learning Centre, and currently works in District 1. Congratulations to you, Tess, and welcome.
Happy to be here.
So today we're going to talk about the 5 core competencies and the panel interview in and along the recruiting process with the CPS. We're going to go through the different competencies that comprise the interview, define each, and provide examples to help you in your preparation for the panel interview. Andy, perhaps you're able to give us a very general overview as to the competencies and how they tie in with the panel interview.
Yes, for sure. So we're going to ask you 5 questions. 1 question for each of the 5 key competencies. Those competencies are interpersonal skills, adaptability and decisiveness, stress management, valuing service and diversity, which is actually a diversity question, not per se a customer service question, and initiative and perseverance. And these are all competencies that we think are key to being a successful police officer. And you're going to evidence your possession of those through your examples, which would be delivered in the STAR format, or situation, task, action, and result.
Excellent. Thanks for that overview. So we'll start with the first competency, and I know, Jonathan, you embody interpersonal skills in our daily interaction. So why don't you define that for me and tell me why it's important for the success of an aspiring police officer?
I think interpersonal skills is one of the most important out of all of the 5. Now, of course, all 5 are important. There's no question about that. But interpersonal skills is really how much of policing is done. You're speaking with members of the public, whether it be witnesses or complainants, but also suspects and offenders. Now, de-escalation is an important component of interpersonal skills. Sometimes folks don't want to talk to you. Is there a way that you can gain their cooperation just using words? Folks don't call police because they're having a good day. You have to show a level of compassion and respect.
I do like the point that you talked about de-escalation. I took a course recently where it says that within the Calgary Police Service, our experience is such that upwards of 97 or 98% of our compliance is gained through verbal interactions. So that communication, that relatability to our members of our community is absolutely key. Can you provide an example of what that might look like for somebody preparing for an interview question in and around that relatability?
Right. So it could be maybe you're working on a project with a colleague. There's some differences of opinion on how we should proceed. You want to proceed this way, colleague wants to proceed this way. There's a little bit of interpersonal conflict because everybody thinks that they're right but not the other person. So how do you resolve that? Is there a compromise? Is there a case of I'm going to make my case and you make yours, and then we decide on which way is best? It's up to the candidate to describe that situation for the panel.
That's a great point. Thanks for that. We'll talk about the next one here, Andy, and that is perseverance.
We'd be looking for an example where somebody who's gone above and beyond and overcome some challenges along the way to achieve that. We can relate that to policing, where sometimes we need to think outside the box and overcome those challenges to get that satisfactory result for us and for our complainant.
Yeah, I mean, problem solving is kind of a number 1 trait of successful police officers, and the idea is not to really give up, right? And so, Tess, why do you think perseverance is key, and how has it lent itself to you in your career so far?
The final steps of my application process are unique to myself. I don't know of anybody else that's had to go through the extra steps, but I got placed in a class, but due to injury, I had to go through a bunch of extra testing. So I actually had to fly from BC to Calgary, met with some people from recruitment, SET, all that sort of stuff. And if it weren't for keeping up like my high level of fitness and coming and doing it, there's a good chance I wouldn't have passed. I was able to finish them, complete them, and then I got placed into classes despite injury. So if I hadn't come prepared, if I hadn't shown the initiative to prepare for it beforehand, I could not be sitting here today.
Well, and you know what? And you're here today, and that's a testament to your kind of resolve and perseverance. So bravo, well done.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Jonathan, let's talk about the third core competency, and that's the one of decisiveness and adaptability.
Decisiveness, I need you to take a look at the situation in front of you and make a clear decision and then pursue that decision. Now, adaptability would be you face an obstacle and now you have to change channels. It might sound like they're a little bit counterintuitive, but decisiveness, I need you to stick to your resolve and follow that path forward that you've developed. And be flexible that if you do have to adjust a little bit, or maybe even in a large way, you are open to change, open to flexibility.
Does the panel look for a time where a candidate had to make a decision where there was no discretionary time? Or is it okay to have discretionary time in which to collect your information and make those decisions? Either of you have any thoughts around that?
I think that's a great question. I think there is room for both, because both are applicable to policing. Sometimes you have to make a critical decision in the blink of an eye, and other times you have plenty of time to gather all of the information. That's exactly what an investigation is, and then make a decision.
I know that our service prides itself on diversity, inclusion, and equity, and there's actually a core competency that's defined specifically in and around that. Andy, tell our audience a little bit about the value of service and diversity.
Yeah, so for this competency, we're not just looking at giving good customer service. It's about valuing the diversity that's presented to us. So from an example perspective, we'd look at a time when maybe the applicant either dynamically or they knew something was coming down the pipe, where they had to apply either something that they knew about this particular diversity, had the time to research about this diversity, and then apply what they knew in order to get the best result. That ability to value that diversity, tailor your approach to the diversity in front of you to get that best result. And diversity is not defined. It could be anything from, age or gender or disability or sexual orientation, culture, anything under the diversity umbrella. People tell us about times when they've encountered diversity throughout their life, be that part of their traveling, or in a job-related environment when they've dealt with somebody in a wheelchair, for example. So it could be a whole gamut of examples.
In our service delivery to a very diverse community, we need to be equitable in how we deliver service to Calgarians, and that there is no one-size-fits-all based on the diverse needs of our sub-communities that we have within our city.
I think that's right, and something which I learned fairly early on in my career was that the words that were given to me by my parents about treat everybody the way you would like to be treated is great to a point. But more than that, why don't we treat everybody the way they want to be treated? And how are we going to know how they want to be treated unless we take the time to learn about them?
Yeah, the adage in reconciliation with our Indigenous community specifically is if it's about us, not without us. Yeah. And I think that's a very apt term as well. So thanks for sharing that. There's no question that policing involves a lot of stress. It's a stressful vocation, that's for sure. Jonathan, how do you define stress management from your experience?
Stress management is important for a number of different reasons. Not only could you be going to something critical like a gun call where everybody's adrenaline and stress is through the roof, it could also be little stresses building up over time. 25 years is a long career, and we want to make sure that you're healthy throughout. So stress management after a critical incident in policing, something like a gun call, how do you make sure that you're healthy? How do you make sure that your colleagues and friends on the job are healthy? Sometimes you go to calls like, for example, a sudden death. You might not be experiencing any grievous bodily harm or death facing you, but it's stressful experiencing a portion of this trauma that a family is experiencing. So being able to look after yourself in the long term is equally as important as in the moment.
Yeah, Tess, do you have any real life examples or how the definition that Jonathan has provided kind of relates to what you've seen so far?
For training, you're Monday to Friday, you're 8 to 4, but on top of that, you have boot polishing, you have ironing your uniform, you have online courses, you have studying, all this sort of stuff. So for me, I set aside at least 24 hours a week just for my time, and remembering that there is life outside of CPS and outside of training. So whether that be getting together with friends, family dinners, going to do like a sports game on your own kind of thing, anything like that definitely helps kind of take your mind just off everything at work.
Just keeps your mind well, I think, right? And I mean, you said it best, Jonathan, is that it's not the gun call or driving fast to call with the chance of grievous bodily harm, but there's also environmental stressors in policing as well. And with the pandemic right now, when many people were working from home and they're out of the community and off the roads, our people were still out there in the community dealing with the unknown impacts of a pandemic that's moving through the community. And so that brings some of that subliminal psychological stress as well. So those are both very great examples. Thank you for that. So we're going to talk about the actual mechanics of the interview.
So in terms of the interview itself, we would provide the applicant with the competency, and then we would ask them a specific question related to that competency. We would expect the answer to that question to be answering the question and to be delivered in the STAR format. Now, this is something that an applicant can easily research. STAR is an acronym for situation, task, action, and result. So, in other words, in terms of situation, what were they actually faced with here? With regards to task, what were they trying to achieve? Action is self-explanatory. How did they go about achieving that task? And the result, how did it end up? The most critical part of the interview is the actions. We don't individually score the parts. If we did, it would probably be around 10%, 10%, 70%, and 10%.
And that the candidate place the emphasis, the meat of the response in that action place. So great breakdown in the percentages for relevance, but how long should each response be?
If an example provides all the relevant information, it would be between 5 to 10 minutes long. So by all means, practice yourself as an applicant in terms of the delivery of your example. If you're getting through your example in 2 or 3 minutes, it's probably going to be short of information. We work on the adage that past behavior is indicative of future behavior. So in an ideal world, examples 5 years or less, but I always caveat that and say to my applicants that this is a test you need to pass, so use your best examples. If you have a stellar stress management example that's maybe 10 years old, feel free to use it. Feel free to check online. Behavioral descriptive interview, STAR format interview, they're one and the same. There's tons of information online, so feel free to check it out.
Great advice. And as an applicant, speaking of resources, am I able to bring notes or any handwritten documents with me to my interview?
That's a great point. Unfortunately, you're not able to bring that information with you to the interview. So it's going to be a case of prepare, prepare, prepare. Make sure that you know your examples inside out, back to front. Be comfortable in delivering them. So this is not something that you can prepare in a few days or a week. I would always encourage applicants to think 2 to 4 weeks in terms of preparation, just to be able to be in a position where you give yourself the best chance of success.
That's great. Tess, how did you prepare for your panel interview?
Funny you should ask. So my old job, I work for BC Wildfire. So about 2 days after I got the call that the interviews had been scheduled, we got deployed to Ontario. So I actually sat with my crew members. We would sit on a helipad waiting for the helicopter to pick us up, and I'd go through the competencies, just kind of relay what I was going to say. They'd have any critiques for me, I'd send them back to the guys back at camp, and it was just kind of like a team effort. I gathered about 3 examples per competency, just kind of did the whole pros and cons with each of the examples, just kind of found which one suited best, which one I could deliver the best. If you want to kind of give what you did, you don't want to kind of base it on what other people did. It's kind of like a little ego boost in a way. I had my file manager as part of my interview, so it was nice to have that familiar face there, and alongside 2 other CPS members. So.
Does that happen frequently? Would the file manager be part of the panel, or was that just an anomaly, Jonathan?
No, that happens regularly, where your file manager would be one of the panel members on that panel. And I just want to add on to one of the points that Tess made. I've seen a lot of folks struggle with the interview because sometimes it is difficult to talk about yourself without feeling like you're an egomaniac. I've said to many of my applicants, there's a way to give credit to the team if it was a team effort, while also highlighting your actions, because it's your interview. We want to see your past behavior so we can predict future behavior. But there's a way to do that with giving credit to the team, but also highlighting your actions.
And being humble at the same time. And I think that the panel interview, the philosophy, it actually ties in very well with operational police work. When you're expected to author a report, do an investigation, or testify in court, there's a very prescribed format, and you're expected to talk about what you did, not what everybody else did. So there's actually a natural kind of interface with operational work as a police officer as well. So clearly the BDI, or the panel interview, is a significant portion of the application process. Is there any other last parting advice, Andy or Jonathan, or even Tess, that you'd like to give to members as they prepare for their interview?
I just can't stress enough how important it is to prepare. You want to use your 5 to 10 minutes per example wisely. Your example isn't running on too long, you're not rambling, you're not providing too few details, trying to be conscious of time. There's that fine line of providing enough detail for us to evaluate the interview, but not also a 101 education on your experience from before.
It's clearly evident from the file manager perspective, those applicants that have not properly prepared or left things till the last minute. But don't worry, your file manager will assist you ahead of time, will give you all the tips that we can in terms of expectations, the things that you can expect from us on the day and the things that we would expect from you as an applicant.
Awesome advice. And you know what, even more of an awesome conversation, certainly very informative. I'd like to thank you each for providing your expertise. Tess, specifically, and congratulations on your recent graduation. Thanks for sharing your experiences and anecdotes with us. To those watching, don't forget to check out our other videos for all things recruiting and police employment related. And thank you for watching.